Before the outbreak of the conflict in November 2020, all sectors in Tigray, including education, exhibited impressive growth. There were 2,221 primary schools, 271 secondary schools, with students having to travel an average of just 2.5 kilometers and 7.06 kilometers to access primary and secondary education, respectively. 2 teachers' colleges in Abiy Adi and Adwa would produce qualified educators to lead this growing number of educational institutions across the state. More than 1.4 million children were enrolled in education. Net enrollment rate for grade 1 and primary education was over 80% and 85%, respectively. The gender parity index showed that close to half of students across Tigray were girls at 0.99. The section-to-student ratio was 1:39 and the textbook-to-pupil ratio reached 1:2. Even before the outbreak of the conflict, the Ethiopian government would refuse to provide essential supplies to students in Tigray, denying students in Tigray face masks that were freely distributed to students in other parts of Ethiopia. Preliminary damage assessment conducted by Tigray's Bureau of Education in collaboration with local and international NGOs and Tigray Teachers Association across 2,054 schools in August of 2021 found that over 85% of classrooms were partially or fully damaged. Over 60% of textbooks, 85% of computers, 80% of plasma TVs, close to 85% of laboratory equipment, over 95% of desks and blackboards, more than 83% of supplementary materials, and assistive technologies for the children with special needs were either looted or destroyed by invading forces. The level of destruction on educational facilities was so intense that it has taken Tigray back over 30 years, with the average distance to access primary education in Tigray growing by 3-folds to 7.3 kilometers from 2.5 kilometers before the conflict. The same is true for secondary education, where the average rate a student would have to travel to access secondary education growing to 17 kilometers, significantly reversing gains made over the past 17 years to bring that number down to 7 kilometers. Similarly, the gross enrollment rate for primary schools stood at over 85% in the year 2020, but stands at 20% in the year 2022. Textbook pupil ratio is now at 1:9. Section student ratio stands at 1:434 and 1:365 in primary and secondary schools, respectively. Negash Secondary School, found in Kilta district in eastern Tigray, is one of the schools that has suffered significant damage. This is Gabra Abbay, a resident of the small town of Negash. He says he witnessed how the school was damaged.
بناء أبي سراويت ونور يسمو يوم كان دقن إرترا سراويت يفريسو إرترا سراويت كم تري يقول لهم من مسح هذا قول نقري لهم عاوزين ما تقرنا تينارا نشعيتو خورسون تلست تقرنا تينارا سقولوا لتبيت مرتي كبرس دليس لازم هراي إيه تنا تقصى بق أصوات أقول عقير وني تري يقول لهم بلازم أزنا مرة نصحفت مرة ما وصحت في قاصيلو نحنا خمسي زل عرمينا ولخنا سرحون رينا سمعنا وين نفلتي.
Negash Primary School, also located in the town of Negash, was built with the support of the government and people of Ireland, also the target of deliberate destruction. Abiy Adi Teachers and Education Leaders College was one of 2 teachers' education colleges across Tigray. Today, we find it in absolute shambles. The Declaration on Child Rights obliges states to ensure that every child has access to quality education. But children in Tigray, due to deliberate destruction of schools and withholding of basic services, have not only been denied access to education, but also their right to life. The deliberate and systematic destruction of educational facilities in Tigray has also included the destruction of schools for students with special needs, having visual, hearing, physical, and mental impairments. This is Maqala Boarding School for the Blind, established in 1993. The school had enrolled hundreds of visually impaired students from across the state for both boarding and out-of-school services. The school principal, Solomon Araya, says the situation is starkly different today.
ቅድምቲ ኩናት ዝነበሩና ተምሃሮ ማለት ኢና ሕዚ ንዛረቦም ዘለና ማለት 59 ካብ ቀዳማይ እስካብ 4 ነይሮምና ካብ 37 ካብ 50 እስካብ 8 ነይሮምና 38 ካብ 9 እስካብ 12 ክፍሊ ነይሮም እዚኣቶም ስሩዕ መናብሮም ጽቡቕ ምሁራና ተምሃሮ ዝጸንሑ እዮም ብሰንኪ ትኹናት ግን ዞም ተምሃሮ እዚኣቶም ኣበይ ከም ዘለዉ ንፈልጦም ይኽእልና ሕዚ ማለት እዩ ተበቲኖምና
Million Miskina is one of the students of Maqala boarding school. She explains the holistic support and care the school used to provide to students, like herself, with special needs.
أوزي بتعمي قرصي مسح درار بس سرعت بساعات كأخذ اللع كأول صريت كبدن بإمزكاتها تلوها كأو مدك أصله فلقين إنه عن عرات خطوها صقروا إيه مالتيو كأوزي تحامين كذا بتعمين زكانا خان ختن سرحتني مالتيو حكمنا بأجانا وسدنا بأجانا مرحنتنا وحطنا نيرا.
Furthermore, Million witnessed that the students with visual impairment have faced various abuses and violations and are denied of their rights to education, which has glimmered their sense of hope.
يا وأنا بزح طلعت كذا حني مكورية جنب علي بتنكرنت جنس كحزم من نات بولكيا نات قارلكيا مالتيو خاز قبل متوسط خاص بزح حدا قاس يقط مكاي مالتي يا وأنا تماهير أخوان دلنركو عقاوي حقي أخوان زمنا نيرة حزقن بقى تمرت مسوق قارنا تسمع عن سمعت من بقى من دار متصرف يا خوينو تعشمنا بقى خاف تمرت زوتس من داديو سمعت بقى من دارنا نقلصو تعشم خوينا مالت أو مرنا استفال عليه تعشم فطير وعنقات قلا فطيرنا مالت.
This is the Amhan Primary School in Embasanity in Central Tigray. In addition to the physical destruction on the school principal Burhana Gabrat Ahmad says students and teachers were executed and those left behind are suffering from mental scars left from witnessing horrific atrocities.
بيتمتنا حدا ممر بزوم وررتي شعبية بالسجنان بخرا تحاريدو تقتلنا أي بخرا حارد ممر تخلي جرز غير دوسي زبال تي بسنك مرحنيت شكور هو تزحله فدما كروم هاي لا جرز غير بسنك تمرحنيت مسانو سون كذا عالم موت كفلنا خيلي ممر تخلي جرز غير دوسي زبال أي بيتمتنا ممر زنارة تم بالسجنا أنا شعبيا أوزي يوم حريدهم قتلهم أوزي يوم دورهم مغيرهم نخبرون فقدوا كادن أي فقدن أوزي أتدوري توانا علام أزيد ما تنايتي كابزل محاورسون تتمهراين رعد فطيرو كاوزي تمرتن كاوزي عدزي نخطف نخوجد زحازو علام أي نيرو مالتي.
Adela Mariam, a grade 5 student at Abba Haile Mariam Primary School in Adwa Central Tigray, is now handicapped. She says her and her friends were playing on a field when they found a grenade amongst a rubble of rocks.
أنا كالي فنجي مثلاً فنجي بني فلتة كاو نازق أبرها أنا سحسقوا أبرها أو سرهت أنا حسب القف الشوش يعني استعيل أفشيلة نفتم اللقعي هيدا كاو نفتم سلقة هو إيدي طارد إيدي طارد
Adela lost her fingers on her right hand, which has made it impossible to write using her right hand. Adela is now learning to write with her left hand.
ويساسك ماري لنيرا ويقدام عندنا ربي صحفينا على الله ما بيدني نيقولنا أي هنا لت نادر رأتي أتصفن نيرا السنة صحفكونا تلا ما مودكو تلا ما يدين هذا كلتا سلسة.
The damage inflicted on Shawat Hagum Primary School, Yetzila Abergala district in central Tigray, was dreadful. The school's principal, Atzulha Gavrakiros, says members of the community have been traumatized by what has unfolded in the school's compound.
As ቤት ትምህርቲ ከም ትሪእዎ ካብ በሪ ክሽካብ ውሽጢ ካብ ውሽጢ ክሽካብ ደገ ጠቕላላ ዓነዎ ቤት ትምህርቲ ኣብ ውሽጡ እውን ዝተፈላለዩ ሬሳን ደምን ዓጽምን ዝወሃለለ ቤት ትምህርቲ እዩ በዚ ምክንያት ከም ትሪእዎ ዘለኹም ከዓ ቅርጽ ናይቲ ቤት ትምህርቲ ናይቲ መካበያ ብሙሉእ እውን ዝፈረሰ ከባቢ 40 ዝኣክሉ ሬሳታት ተቐርዎ ቤት ትምህርቲ እዩ በዚ ምክንያት እውን ብስነ ልቦንኡ ዝተሃሰየ ተምሃራይን መምህርን ማሕበረሰብ ከባብን ተፈጢሩ እዩ ማለት እዩ ናይ 45 ዓመት መረዳእታ ዝነበረ ህይወት ናይቶም ሃሮን ህይወት ናይቶም ዘምሃሩ ወለድን ኣገልግሎት ዝነበረ ዜሮ ምንም መረዳእታ ዘይብሉ بصلاة شعبية استقاصلي دفاع ويكام عسكري نير بيت تمرتي أوزي تتخيلهم زنور بزح استفال عليه مسارات نيرهم حزبون اللو مالتي أي فلتنا يوم نيتفتشه
كحيلة جورة تنساي and إنزش قبل أمها students at the primary school witnessed the destruction committed on the school.
بيت مرت عنيو ومبارات تبلاشو تو لايبراريون تبلاشو تي كلاسات تقاطيلو مصحفتنا ون تقاطيلو بسنك طلعت كاكن مهارتي خالنا تصلع سنكي فنج حيزهم الموتو وقتلهم بعلون አለው سيا هاي ثلاث بحرون አለ المهار ماتي ساميኤል ገርኪዳን ዝበሃል ሻምና ክፍል ተማሃራይ ብሰንኮም ሞይቱ ማቲ ገብረ አረጋይ ገብረ ሃንስ ባሉን ተሻዕ ክፍል ዝመሃል ዝነበረ ብሰንኮም ሞይቱ
ሓደ ክላስና ተበላሽዋ ቃጺሎሞ ካልኣይ ወንበርና ሰባዊሮም ሓጎንዲ ደሞ ሳልሳይ ብራክቦርድና መጽሓፍና ደፋተርና እውን ቃጺሎሞ ክላስ ደምን ዓጽኛ ከተራ ሬሳ ለውዝ መጽሓ ክትማርስ ጸገም
Members of the community in Shoat Tahgum, Haile Selassie Gebre Selassie and Tigrai Nagash say it's not just the school that was damaged, but the environment as well.
سنلو بناس عنتو خبي حبيرنا أيو تمز أو تيترف لا أنا عرفنا العبيتون أفز بيت مرتخنا أتوكن قلقل بتعب خبي أسكاري أشجاري نيرو تمز أنا تما كم مسرت له عرورم خوري عرورم خوري
أفز بيت مرت شمان توحد قمي تاميو عنكتنا عدو اليوم عنكتي تربيزا نصورنا فلصو ولا ميتسنا فرسنا تسبره نديديو مهارله ببومبا نتقطقط زخابش ميتميو ولعو تمهارو
Shumiya Berha is one of the victims. He found a hand grenade while playing with his friends. His life hasn't been the same since.
كنت يقول عنيركم دحركة
تفنجير الحرب
تمسخازنا ورق العخة
مويت سنة
Shumiya's mother, Zawda Hagos, remembers the day of her son's injury.
ما برها يوفر مجمره ما حرب لوفروا فاوقل توقع عم تهيلنا ما حكمنا توي مويتو تي لما حكمنا هايدم وسيدم امراقنا هو مزين
In addition to the systematic destruction of educational facilities across the state by Ethiopian forces and their allies from Eritrea, schools and colleges have been turned into crime scenes. Furthermore, a 9-month-long siege on the region is further devastating the civilian population, exposing Tigrayans to starvation as well as disease. This has completely wiped out decades of progress, denying basic services to Tigrayans everywhere.
The aggressors made all plannings. They conjectured necessary to commit genocide on the Tigrayan people. And damaging educational system and the educational infrastructure was their main focus to commit the genocide, all necessary genocide items on the Tigrayan people in short term and especially in long term. So that's why their main focus was made on educational systems and infrastructures. And they did it, actually. Even themselves unequivocally witnessed. Among the witnesses, we can simply listen and understand the speech by one of the military commanders of the fascist Abiy group called Ababaw Taddese.
ኢኮኖሚ ሴንተሩ ተመተረ መሰረተ ልማቱ በሙሉ ተመታ ዳትስ የጦርነቱ ዋና ዓላማው ነው
Pika Habisto, the special envoy for the European Union to the Horn, says he has heard Ethiopian authorities describe their intentions clearly.
For me, particularly the news of the violence against the women is incredible and something that probably not has happened in any wars or conflicts in that region. Maybe a word about what is the aim of Ethiopia. When I met the Ethiopian leadership in February, they really used this kind of language that they are going to destroy the Tigrayans, they are going to wipe out the Tigrayans for 100 years and so forth, which for me referred to very serious human rights atrocities and crimes as well if you wipe out your national minority. What is it? You cannot destroy all the people. You cannot destroy all the population in Tigray, and I think that's very obvious that we have to react, and because it looks for us like ethnic cleansing.
The destruction on educational facilities, the brutal killings, and the scar that has left on community members will be difficult to heal, according to Dr. Zenawi Zarihun, a psychologist.
Perhaps more important and worrying is the impact it has on what the kids have lost in terms of the developmental stage. The early childhood age is very critical in building the kids cognitively, especially the kindergarten year is important in shaping the child for the future assignments, for the future mathematical, scientific, and what have you concepts. So this is a very critical stage, and for the kids who were not able to attend school in this particular age, I mean, it's a very serious problem in terms of impacting the cognitive development of the kid. That is one. And the second one is when kids go to school, it's not just the academic content that they study. The social competence side is equally, if not more important, because children in schools are supposed to create friendships with others, to solve problems, to compete, to communicate. All these things are possible when kids go to school. You cannot make him socially competent by keeping them at home. Most of the kids were talking about issues they were not supposed to talk at this age. They told us stories, horrible stories of witnessing dead bodies in the school compound. You can imagine. At this age, they were not supposed to tell us these kinds of horrific stories. They were supposed to study, to laugh, to talk about academic matters. But unfortunately, we listen to their heartbreaking stories, and that will have serious psychological implications for the years to come, unless we do our level best to do some kind of psychological support, psychiatric support, perhaps for some of the groups. I think we have a lot of work to do as a community.
Classrooms and schools were also left with hate speech on every wall and blackboard against the people of Tigray that go farther in demonstrating the genocidal intent of invading forces.